And we're back for the third video highlighting Candida auris and a potential link to gastroscopes. And we've dove really deep into this conversation, Larry, including that this may not be related to the gastroscope as a device itself.
Right.
There may be other factors that are going on. And we teed up the risk factors. I don't know if you want to summarize those and maybe add a little more color from the last video to set the stage for where we're going to be recommending some guidance and drawing some final conclusions as we wrap up this series.
Right. So we're going to focus today on guidance, that is to how to improve the safety of your patients now that you know about this potential problem of Candida auris transmission. So what we're talking about a MAUD report that identified, medical device report that identified in December 2022, that links a patient who tested positive for Candida auris to exposure to a gastroscope. Now, that then causes one possibly to conclude, oh, the gastroscope then infected the patient. And that's not necessarily true. There's an association, but it doesn't mean cause and effect. So in this particular MAUD report, it's interesting that understanding that one of the risk factors for Candida auris is the placement of a PEG tube, which is also often done for nutritional purposes. And PEG tube, for those of you that don't know, is percutaneous endoscopic gastrostomy. So here we have this particular device. The placement of it, for whatever reason, is a risk factor for Candida auris, and the MAUD report that explains the patient becoming colonized with Candida auris after exposure to gastroscope also underwent this procedure. So we have to keep that in context and realize that it may not have been the gastroscope, though it may have been. We just don't know, but maybe it was that associated procedure that was more likely responsible for this infection.
So this represents a challenge too, Larry, right? Because, we're not really sure. Like you said, it's not cause and effect. It's just linked or associated.
Right.
So obviously more studies or more data is going to potentially point people in the right direction. But in the meantime,
what do we do?
People who are following this or watching this video, right, exactly, like with all this gray area, what do we do about it?
So we want to be on the lookout for the possibility that Candida auris can be transmitted by a flexible endoscope. There are reports in the literature of this deadly fungus being transmitted by shared reusable medical devices. This MAUD report was the first one linking this fungus, transmission of this fungus, possibly to a gastroscope. But we want to realize and be on the lookout for this, that means that a gastroscope could potentially transmit this fungus because indeed other reusable medical equipment, specifically digital thermometers, axillary temperature probes, have been linked to cases of Candida auris infection or colonization. So we talked about modes of transmission in a previous video, and now let's get to specific guidance. So we want to reprocess the gastroscopes according to the instructions for use, the IFUs. This is something we all hear. It's become kind of like just a cliche almost, reprocess, or maybe an overused statement, if you will, but we can't emphasize it enough. And with gastroscopes, hospitals may, when warranted, want to consider adopting one of the 4 supplemental measures that the FDA published in 2015 and applied to duodenoscopes. They may want to apply them to gastroscopes as well, and for example, double high-level disinfection or sterilization of those endoscopes. In this video, we won't go into that in detail now. We may in another video. The other issues are environmental surfaces. These too, like reusable medical equipment, can become colonized and transmit Candida. So in addition to making sure that we're reprocessing all shared medical equipment according to the IFUs, we want to make sure that we're properly washing and disinfecting environmental surfaces. And this may be done routinely during the day, depending on the circumstances, or per the facility's policies and procedures during terminal cleaning at the end of the day. So we're accounting for reusable instruments. We're now accounting for environmental surfaces. And we want to also be very concerned about hand hygiene. That is where direct contact is one of the modes of the primary mode of transmission for this fungus. So we want to make sure that we're adhering to proper hand hygiene and that we're following proper protocol to make, and gloving, in PPE, personal protective equipment, to make sure we're not exposing our patients to this organism. It is not transmitted through the air. It's transmitted by contact. When necessary, we may even have to adopt contact precautions to stop the transmission of this organism. So let's be on the lookout for this organism. Let's have it in our radars. Let's notify our microbiology department to be specific to look for this organism. That often is not done the specificity, and so this organism can be missed. Let's be on the lookout on it. Let's maybe turn up our sensitivity to detect it and understand that there is the possibility that a gastroscope may have transmitted this organism, so let's be aware of it, particularly for at-risk patients and those, for example, undergoing these PEG tube placement. Those are particularly at risk. You may want to do some surveillance of them, some monitoring of them, and if they are infected, you need to isolate them and cohort them. And keep in mind that high-level disinfection will destroy Candida auris when in direct contact with it. While sterilization isn't necessarily necessary, high-level disinfection is, but that's, for example, let's say on a surface. When it comes to the gastroscope, because of the complex surfaces, sterilization is a recommended procedure.
Yeah, that's a really good distinction. There's been a lot of conversation in the industry about high-level disinfection versus sterilization with reusable endoscopes. So I'm glad that you made sort of that distinction there as we wrap up this conversation on Candida auris and an associated infection to a gastroscope. Absolutely.
Reusable medical equipment, yes.
Larry, great job, and this has been a very excellent series. I'm looking forward to the next topic of conversation as you continue your work.
Yes.
We have so many ahead of us, and the YouTube channel is housing all of these videos, so I do want to point everybody back to the Transmission Control YouTube channel. If you're not finding us there now and you're finding us on LinkedIn or Facebook, we'll have a link right directly to that YouTube channel in the notes for this post.
And in closing, I'd like to say that these videos are geared toward risk management in infection control, and we will always provide guidance for you to reduce the risk of infection of your patients and to improve quality and patient safety. Always recommendations. We will bring up these topics, but understand that when you leave and you've watched one of these very brief videos, you will feel empowered.